Welcome to this lecture. So from the previous couple of lectures, we saw how we can execute this command, that is any command in our cell of the command prompt, and next we saw how we can just send that report back to the server, which is our Gmail server, or basically sending back to our Gmail account. And we also saw how we can just download some of these from the URL, some of the content. And now basically if we see what we can do next is, after we download anything, so instead of this link, so let me just remove this link and show you. Instead of this link, okay, this is very long link, let me just remove everything. Let me just remove this part and these two. So let me say, instead of this link, let me do something like www dot some link and .com, and here I'm just taking an example. So let me say if this is keylogger that is sent for the user to download, and let me see that now this is the process to download. So basically what happens is, at the result, this has downloaded successfully at here. So after this, it has downloaded to the client because of this result. And next thing we can do now is to just execute that. So what you can do is just take the SOAP process. So first of all, you can just use that SOAP process, and here all you need to do is SOAP process dot open check output, and after that you can simply put the result over here, because in this case we want to execute the result. So result will be this file, which is keylogger. It is simply saying that after you get that result, it is just run that keylogger, which is basically this keylogger.exe. So we get the result. You can also print the result after you just download it, and you can simply run that keylogger, because now it is inside the client. So you can get that, and now after that, because we have the keylogger, you can simply get again, maybe over here, that can be, let me say, result of keylogs, because we are just executing this keylogger. Now we'll just get the keylogs, and that can be sent to the email. And we have seen that sending an email is so easier using this method, which we have saw before, that is this same method, which is send mail method. So now we'll just execute it, all of these which we have just shown here. And first of all, the first step is to use the keylogger. So instead of just making your own keylogger, you can also use the application that is provided online, which is Beelogger. So let me just go through the tour of that Beelogger. So first of all, open your Firefox. Let me close everything. And here I want to just search for the Beelogger. And this is the link you want to go, which is the Beelogger official website, thanks to this man. And now you have to just press this green button over here saying clone or download. Let me just copy it first, this link, and let's go back to this terminal. Let me just open the new terminal over here, new window. And what you need to do over here is you have to first type git clone and paste that link, which is the link of a git. So let me just paste it. Let me just hit enter. It is going to clone the Beelogger. It will just download that Beelogger, and it will just give us the Beelogger that is installed on our machine within a minute. So it has been successfully downloaded. Let me just navigate. So first of all, let me list all of this, and you can see there is a Beelogger folder. So let's go over there. Let me just list everything. And now first of all, we have to install that. So we'll just use this install command, or you can simply do something like sh and install.sh. So let me just hit enter, and now it is going to install everything that is needed. So it has fetched everything. So let it give some time to just read all the packages. And first of all, it will just sync everything. So first of all, it should give us some information about this wine configuration. So basically what happens is, we are going to install all of the packages that is needed for this Beelogger in this wine. So basically this is also the environment for this Windows version. So here we'll just say Windows 10. So this blogger is not going to act on this Kali Linux. Instead, it is going to configure on this Wine machine. So every packages that you install is going to be installed in this Wine. So what happens, basically some of the packages like PyInstaller, PyHook, or the PyWin32, they are going to be installed in this Wine. So let's just press OK. So next thing is it will just see all of the package, and I have already installed 2.7 version in my machine. In your case, it should not have been installed. So first of all, you can simply install it, and I'll just press finish, and it is going to be installed over here, and let it give a time to install. And after that, let me just press finish. So next is going to be PyWin32. It is going to install this package again. So let me press next. It is going to search for this Python directory where this Python is downloaded, and it is obviously downloaded in my case, that is in the C drive, and basically this is in the Wine configuration. So let me just press here, that is next, and next again, in order to install this PyWin32. And this is the package that is required to make the keylogger. So in the Python version 2.7, it is no longer required, that is PyInput. We have already seen how to make the keylogger with the help of PyInput module in the previous lecture, but in the case of Python version 2.7, which is installed in this Wine, it is going to use this PyWin and a PyHook. So let's create finish again, and now it's time to install the PyHook. So let me press next, and it is going to search again the same directory. Let me just press finish, and it will now check for the PyInstaller. So I have already installed the PyInstaller in this Kali machine, so it has shown us that requirement had already satisfied, but in your case it will just download that file, which is this PyInstaller from here. So we have now installed this blogger successfully. Let me list all of this file, and now we have again this b.py file to run. So in order to run any Python file, it is done with the Python command, and let's press this b.py. So now we have successfully configured the B in our Kali machine. So let me hit enter, and the keylogger is to generate the keylogger over here. So it has given some of the information like a flash update or a fake Word document. So these all are the keylogger, but with a different file. So if you download this, or basically if you just made this Adobe Flash Update, it will be in the form of Flash Update, but it will eventually be your keylogger. And you can also have this blank executables, which I normally prefer, and let me just press 6 because I want this blank executables. You can also download this fake PDF file or the PowerPoint file, Word file. Everything is available over here, and these all are keyloggers. So let me just press 6, and now it will give you the information of Gmail. So in this case, we don't have to manually create this send mail method, because this blogger has this information to send that keylogs that it has recorded in this Python file back to the Gmail account. So let me just type here randomly. You can just make your test email over here, and you can also see some information that is showing that don't use your personal email, make a dedicated one. That means you can just make a new email in order to test this blogger. And the next is to type your password, and now you can see here is a link that is shown over here, which is saying enable access to less secure app on the Gmail account. And I have told you before, while making the malware in the first lecture, you have to first of all go to this link and make sure that this allow less secure app on your Gmail account is on, because this is required in order to just make access to our backdoor, or basically this has to send some keylogs back to our Gmail account, and that means we have to just get this access to our less secured app, which is this payload. So if I just hit enter again, then it is going to show us this information. If this information is correct or not, I'll just say yes, and it is going to just create the file, or basically the keylogger, in this dist folder. So let me just go in the desktop, and it will be okay. I have that installed in the home, so it is in the home blogger, and it will be installed, or it will just make that in the dist folder, which will be just this keylogger. But we are just covering the Python lecture, that means I'm not going to use this keylogger, and I have already shown you how we can just make keylogger with the help of this blogger. But this is the lectures of the Python where you want to learn all from the Python instead of making use of this application or a simple application. So we'll just make use of now our own keylogger. We'll just make our own keylogger instead of using this blogger, but I have already shown you how to make this. So next thing what you can do is simply you can just copy or basically get that application that is created by this blogger, and let's go to the PyCharm, and here you can replace this keylogger with the blogger that is created with this blogger application. That will be with the extension .exe, because that has pre-installed PyInstaller, and basically what PyInstaller does is it will just convert the Python file into the .exe file, which is the executable that is required for the Windows. And after you just download it, it will execute on the machine, and basically this is not needed, which is the send email in the case of your blogger. So this will be just your program in order to send to the blogger or the keylogger, which is named as blogger, to the client. But now I want to make everything from the beginning, so let me just create the new file. So instead of this, I'll just create the new file, and our file name will be keylogger. So we are not going to use the, okay, I have already made the keylogger, so I'll just say main keylogger. So this will be my main keylogger. So now what you need to do is create the keylogger for our own. We have also done this in the previous lectures, so this will be also a quick revision. So let me go to the settings, and as before we have to install some package, and in order to work with this keylogger we'll just download this PyInput package. Let me install this, and it will just install all of the packages. So for that I'll just execute this, or basically we'll just remove this keylogger because we are not going to use that. Let me go back to the PyCharm, and it has already downloaded a package for us. So let's import that package we have downloaded, and I want this PyInput and the keyboard, which is the interface that is going to be used. And here I want to import threading, which will support us threading, and I have already shown you how to use the threading in the previous lecture. Make a reference to that lecture if you get any confusion here. So I'll just make a class which is named as keylogger, and in the object oriented programming I have already said you before, the first method in this keylogger can be the init method, which will act as a constructor that is going to just initialize the variables of this class or the attribute of this class. So I want to just make keylogs method over here. So this is the attribute, not the method. So this keylogs is going to capture all the keylog that is just pressed on the client. So let's define another method, and this is going to be append to keylogs. This is the second method. I want to just append the string to that log. So in order to just access to the class variable, I have already told you before in the object oriented section, you have to make use of this self, which is pointing to the current object. So I'll just say that keylogs should have now, that is the log, which is basically that is same keylogs, and we'll just add it to the string that is passed here, because this is the work of the append. So we just append. So next function is to process the key, or basically listen, key listen. So I'll just say key listen or something like this. So what we did here is we'll just make some function which will just determine which key is pressed in the client side. And now what you're gonna do is we'll just say try, because there will be the certain cases in the case of this PyInput where it won't capture some of the characters like spaces, or the character like maybe which has the attribute error, maybe something like esc command or the control command won't be captured. So PyInput keyboard will only capture this key like the alphabetical key A to Z, but this won't capture like the special key which can be the control, shift or esc. So let's do that first. So first of all we want to capture the current key. So this will be the current key, and that current key can be first of all key, and we want that character from here. So except is to catch the exception that can be occur while you're executing this code. So exception here will be attribute error, and if there is a attribute error, that means we are not able to capture some of the special key. And if that special key is your space key, which is the space, and if that is the space key, we are going to just say something that is current key now should be space, because that is the space. Else there can be other key, something like maybe control key, ESC key. In that case, we are going to get that current key, and now in this case we'll just add that to the key because that is the key now. And we'll just make some spaces here in order to just make something like, if I just press maybe ESC, it will just print me something that is space first, and it will just say ESC and space. So this will be result, or this will be just paste to the current key. So after that, we have to now just append to the log. So in order to append the log, we have append to keylog method over here. Let's go over here, and I'll just say append to keylogs, and that should be with this current key. So what we just did, we just saw which is the key that is pressed in that client side. We just get that key and we just append over here, and we just get that keylogs, which is obviously the class attribute. So we have defined here the two method that is going to append, and that is going to just get that key which is pressed on the client side. So next thing what I want to do is basically, let me just go over here and let's now start the some of the methods. So before that, let me say something that is, I want to report the key. What if I want to say something with this key? So let's see how we can just report, or basically giving message to the information. In this case, I'm not going to send information to the Gmail. That will be covered in the next lecture. We have to also cover that is just converting this to the exe files and download. Basically we have seen before, that is how we can just make the download procedure over here, that is this URL, and basically we'll also cover that in the next lecture. So before that, what I need to do is go back to the keylogger, and in this keylogger I'll just say print, that is the key, and in this case it will be self.keylogs, because this is the keylogs, which is the list of a key that is pressed in the client computer. So now next thing what I want is, after you just print everything, in the next case, or basically in the next loop, it should be empty, because we don't want the repetition of that same keylogs. And the next one is, let me use the threading. So let's make the timer to execute this keylog. So I'll just say threading dot timer, which is the module that is going to take first the time in the second that this is going to execute. So I want to execute this whole code in the thread in 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds this is going to execute, and after executing we have to call this same method, that is self.report. It is the method of this same class. So let me just remove this, and now we are just saying that in every 5 seconds you have to call this report, because we want to print that keylogs that is printed in the client in every 5 seconds. And let's now use this timer, and this timer is basically the method to start this thread. So we have just start the thread, but now we have to create that thread. So if you just remember from the previous lecture, what we told in the previous lecture, that there was going to be this start method that is going to execute the threads, or that is going to run the threads. So this start method is basically the method of this threading module. So if you go to this threading module documentation, you will see that this start method is going to run or basically execute that thread. But in this case we have now an option to override this start method. So instead of using the start method that is defined in this threading module, we are going to make our own start method. So that is basically your overriding. So what we are going to do here is, we are going to set a listener. So we have now seen here, that is, we have seen what key is pressed, but we haven't set the listener. So first of all, and if you just remember from the previous lecture of a threading, the first method that is going to be execute is this start method. So in this start method I want to have the listener. So I'll just say keyboard and listener, this is the basically listener for our pi input module. So we have used this pi input, and the listener will be keyboard, and I want to make use of this listener module. And here let me just go to the documentation, and let's see, I think I forgot here, that is maybe on press or on click, but if that was on click it would be for the mouse module. I think it is on press. So let's go over here and let's see the pi input documentation. Let's check this documentation. Here is this pi input, and let's open this, and I want to just handle the keyboard, and I want to monitor the keyboard. So you could see it is the listener, and it has this on press module. So here let's go back to our PyCharm, and in this listener we have now on press, and on this on press I want to process that key press. So what we are doing is, if any key is pressed on the keyboard, we want to call this process key listen method. So let's call that method on every key pressed on the keyboard. So that is process key listen method. So we just should remove this. So we just calling this on press argument is this on press key listener, or basically process key listener. So we just set the listener using this pi input module over here. You can check the documentation for further reference. So next thing what I want to do is, we have to use this key listener or a keyboard listener, and with this keyboard listener I want to call some of the method. If there is a key listener, I want to call first the report, which is basically giving every information about that key. And next is, I want to just make this join, because you could see this join method is in the documentation of the pi input. Let's check that again. So we are just setting this listener. So this is to collect event until released, or basically it will just see, or basically it will just continue to listen on the on press, and we are just not using this on release because this is not important, but we'll just see on press because this is the main importance of the keylogger. And now let's go over here again and let's see the PyCharm. So we have completed now our keylogger, and you can see that if I now print this, which is run here, it is not going to do anything for us. So if I just say main keylogger, and if I just go over here, and it is not going to do or not going to print anything for us. And even if I just type anything my keyboard on my keyboard, so let me just open the terminal, and in this terminal let me say I just press some letter, it is not going to show us anything in this output console. Because if you just remember from the object oriented section, one part is to create a class and another part is to create the object of this template or a prototype or a class, whatever you need to call. So next thing is to create the object. So let's see how we can just create the object of this keylogger. So first of all, I'll just say my keylogger, which is the object, and here first of all you have to make the object from this keylogger. That means let me just say K with a capital, because you know the class starts with the capital letter, class name. So I'll just say keylogger, and after that if you just see that I want the keylogger interface, so basically you can simply say keylogger. And if you just go to this init method, because I have already told you before that if you create the object, the first method that is going to be invoked or the automatically calling of this init method or the constructor will happen. So basically when we just create this object of this class, the first method that is going to be called or invoked automatically is this constructor. So now we have just automatically called that constructor. Let me just run that start method, because that is the method that is going to do everything for us. So if you just see, this is going to have the listener, it is going to call this process key listen method, this method on every key pressed, which is with this argument, and with every key press it is going to send that back to us with this report method. And basically this is the way to just create the keylogger. So let's see now if this works or not. So let me just run this first, And you can also say something like, in this report you can just say something that is the message giving that keylogger is started or something like that, but it is not necessary for now. So let me just run this main keylogger. Let's run this, and let's go over here and open this maybe here, and let's see if this works or not. So you could clearly see, if I just press backspaces, because I was just opening, or basically I was closing that whatever is written in this, so it has shown us that it has pressed key dot backspace. So let's type something over here. So let me say this is our keylogger. Let it give a time, and you could see in every 5 seconds, because we have just given the time period over here from the threading. If you just see, here was the time, maybe where was that time? Over here. So we had given this 5 seconds, so it is going to capture in every 5 seconds. So we have seen here, that is I have written this is our keylogger, and if I just type backspace again, that is going to just print us every that is written over here. So I'll just type this is a test for keylogger use. So it is going to just grab everything over here, and we have made our keylogger now. So next step is, now I have told you before that we can also do this by using the blogger, but I just made a decision in order to just learn this PyLogger, or basically the way to learn is simply creating our own. So instead of just making by some application, we just created the keylogger by our own Python skill. So let me just close this keylogger first. So next thing what you can do now, and what we'll be doing in the next lecture, is to just convert this keylogger into the executable. We'll just made something that is this download, in order to make download of this keylogger directly to the client. And the next thing what we also can do is use the Gmail in order to send that keylogger pressed back to our server. So that will be covered in the next lecture. See you in the next one.